So this is day 3 of our 5-day migraine coaching. So 5 days to calm your day. And I'll be sharing with you about how you can start to have a calmer day, free from migraine attacks, and crush the migraine attacks. So we've gone through day 1, where we understood our triggers and we set our intentions. And day 2, we were building a migraine-friendly diet to nourish our body. Now, day 3 is going to be about mastering and managing stress through a faith and science approach. Migraine, we covered the aspect of migraine from the cellular level, moved from the cellular level to the tissue level, then the organ level, and then the system level. And this is really key and important because once we work on managing the cellular level of our migraines, everything starts to fall in place and we start to know how to really take care of ourselves. Now, I've got a question to ask you. Are you stuck on Stress Express? Have you ever felt like stress has really taken over your life, leaving you constantly on edge most of the time, exhausted, you're struggling to find any balance in your life? If that's you, you are totally not alone. Not alone at all. Because here's the thing. Many people today, they find themselves trapped on what I like to call the stress express. And this is where you have this relentless circle of worrying and overcommitment and physical strain. But what if I told you that there is a way that you can step off that train completely, step off that train and find peace and balance? And you can find this through the power of a combination of your faith and also knowing the science behind why you are having these stress attacks. So let's explore it. Here is how it works, right? Understanding stress and our modern day epidemic, shall we say. Stress is really a natural part of life, and it is designed to help us react to immediate challenges. It activates the sympathetic nervous system in our body, which is commonly known as, you might know it as the fight or flight system. That's the one that pumps all the adrenaline and cortisol through your body in response to any perceived threat at all. So in the short term, this response is quite helpful in the short term. And the problem comes that in today's fast-paced society, in today's world, we often find that we find ourselves in a constant state of chronic stress, where our body is never truly relaxed. And this can leave us feeling burnt out, anxious, and just physically unwell. Many people are in that state and they don't even recognize it or even know it. Now, the mistake is ignoring chronic stress. That is a huge mistake. Ignoring chronic stress. And most of these common mistakes that people make when it comes to when it comes to ignoring the stress is that they're ignoring the signs of this chronic stress. And I'm sure most people, they view being stressed as kind of like a badge of honor. It's, oh my goodness, I'm so stressed. I'm so busy. And they use that word as sometimes many of them are showing off. But chronic stress can manifest in several ways. Constant fatigue, you find it difficult to concentrate, you have frequent headaches, digestive issues, you feel irritable or sometimes anxious, and you have this anxiety, you're craving sugar, you're craving sugar, you're craving caffeine, and you cannot even sleep. Then over time, this can then lead to more serious consequences, both for your body and for your brain. And this also weakens your immune system. You also have heart issues, weight gain for some people, and even memory loss. Ignoring these signs can only deepen the cycle. Here is an approach that you might want to now consider. But before I get to that stage, I just want to, before I get to that stage, I just want to find out how the response is. Okay. Okay, great. I will carry on then. Now, breaking free of chronic stress requires you addressing the issue both physically and spiritually. These are the two perspectives that it helps in managing your chronic stress. Faith and science, they are not opposing forces. They're actually complementary and they complement each other very well. Whilst the science, knowing the science provides you with actionable strategies to manage your stress, I believe that the faith offers you hope, peace, as well as a deep sense of purpose. Together, they are really powerful foundations for lasting relief. There's no point you just knowing just the science or just knowing just the faith part of it without really knowing what is happening in your body or knowing how your faith can also help you. Together, you are able to manage your chronic stress a lot better. Now, for those of us that suffer, that have been managing migraines for quite a while, there are different types of migraine, and the one that is common. So you've got the episodic migraine, and then you've got the chronic migraine. Chronic migraine tends to happen when the episodic migraine graduates to chronic migraine. So episodic migraine will be you having maybe one or two migraines a month, or really very few migraines, sporadic once in a while. Chronic migraine is when you start to have it a lot more often. And there's an assessment that you can take to really find out the level of your migraine. And I'll put that in the link below in the chat section. Now, how do you now have episodic, how do you end up having chronic migraine? One way that chronic migraine can really manifest is when there's something, I'll share with you something called central sensitization syndrome. And sorry about that. I was talking about central sensitization. So I was talking about central sensitization, and I'll show you the structure of the brain. Now, your nervous system, now when it comes to managing stress, there are 5 steps to manage stress and reclaim your life. And the first one is to activate the parasympathetic system. So I was talking about that the nervous system, you have the central nervous system and the parasympathetic nervous system. And the parasympathetic nervous system is, or sometimes we call it as the rest and repair system, is really an antidote to chronic stress. And a simple way to activate this parasympathetic system is by, the deep breathing that many people do, deep breathing exercises. So when you try to inhale for 4 seconds, hold it for 4 seconds, and then exhale for 6 seconds. And doing light exercises, because most of the time, those managing migraines, exercise tends to aggravate their migraines. Going on walks, like I can see that you are doing, stretching, dance, that can also help to build up the stress hormones, right? To release the buildup of stress hormones, And then having good sleep hygiene. I know many people, most people nowadays are not even able to sleep up to 7 hours. But ideally, having an optimal amount of hours of good quality sleep helps to reduce migraines, because having too much sleep sometimes affects some people. Having too little sleep affects people. So it all depends on your body and what your body really wants. And then that can gauge your sleep pattern. But the key is having that quality sleep. The second one is relying on the power of prayer. I said that I'm a Christian. I'll be sharing a little bit about some of the things that I do. So praying and meditating kind of refocuses your thoughts, refocusing your thought on God and God's promises, remembering that you were created wonderfully and perfectly created. It's just certain situation about the environment you're at, the things that you're eating has caused kind of a chemical misfiring and all that, which is what I'm going to talk about, because I mentioned I was going to talk about central sensitization. The third one is learning to say no, setting boundaries, having good boundaries. It's not everything that you have to say yes to. Learning not to overcommit to certain things, because overcommitment is kind of like the fast track to getting burnt out. And reflecting on your priorities. The fourth one is to release, to reassess the relationships that you have with caffeine. Some people, because caffeine is like a double-edged sword, caffeine can help with the migraine attacks. There are some treatments that we provide for people that have migraines, and caffeine can also be a trigger. So knowing about how your body reacts to caffeine really helps, because caffeine stimulates the stress hormones, keeping your body in that state of heightened alertness. So consider reducing your intake or even switching to things like green tea, which we talked about yesterday. Green tea, and green tea contains thiamine, which is a natural calming agent. but it all depends on what your body is like. So knowing the root cause of your migraine, it, in which I mentioned yesterday about certain blood tests and tests that you can do to then find out what is actually happening in your body system. And then incorporating joy and gratitude. I talked about the pray matter in yesterday's talk, in which I mentioned about all the various steps to do, including things like laughter, being grateful, praise, are very, very powerful in getting rid of, or shall I say, improving the migraine. Now, I was looking at now it's talking about the central sensitization. So this is just this is not a very good photo that I wanted, but I just thought I'll just share this to show because it shows certain pathways and things like that. But I'll just talk very briefly about central sensitization and what it is actually, in relation especially to the migraine attacks. It is really a condition where the central nervous system becomes really hypersensitive, and it becomes really hypersensitive to stimuli, leading to kind of an exaggeration of responses to, for example, the pain. Because I've met quite a few people that very little thing will cause them to really be in pain. And this phenomenon is kind of like the key factor in in the development of in the development and really the persistence of chronic migraine and some other type of chronic pain condition. So when it comes to the migraine attacks, the central sensitization, it just means that, the neurons that we talked about, the neurons, so we're always going back to the cellular level, the neurons in the brain and the spinal cord, they become much more reactive to both things like the pain, any painful or non-painful stimuli. And then this now causes kind of like an increase in sensitivity, which can result in, for example, having this heightened pain sensitivity, which people now experience pain, like I mentioned, even when there is you don't have to feel pain, like somebody just touching you. There's a particular girl that once if you just touch her, it's so painful. Brushing your hair can be painful. Wearing glasses can be painful. Another thing is they tend to have a lowered pain threshold. I haven't really talked about it in this session, but in my previous session, I talked about, the pain threshold in which you view your pain, you view the triggers kind of in a bucket, and you have your primary triggers and then you have secondary triggers. So if you know what your primary triggers is, that's really key. So some people, I think you mentioned that yours was stress and I think it was sleep. Another person is dehydration as well, and maybe eating things that contain histamines. Okay, so if you know your standard threshold, that's your primary threshold, anything else that comes with and fills up that bucket, a secondary a secondary trigger can tip you off into having migraine. So this stress threshold for pain is really decreased, making the individual just so much more prone to experiencing migraine attacks. Another thing that central sensitization causes is the pain signals. They are really amplified and prolonged. So there are some people that maybe they start with episodic migraines. Their migraines is sporadic. It doesn't happen all the time. But then over time, they find that their migraine is, instead of lasting, because standardly migraine lasts 4 to 72 hours. So instead of they are used to their migraine lasting maybe 8 hours, but instead of lasting that time, it just lasts 84 hours. So that is central sensitization is really taking is kicking in there, and that 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 cause so the pain signals, they said they're amplified and they are so much prolonged, causing your migraine to last a lot longer and then becoming much more chronic. So the people fall into the chronic phase. So it's no longer episodic. They are now chronic, in which they have over 10 attacks in a month. Now, another thing is that the pain can spread. So the pain can spread to other areas that is not really the original. It's not really the original area that it's normally affected. And that's because of this heightened state of the nerve cell. So in conclusion, really, knowing chronic stress is something that I would need to aim to reduce completely. And there's a way to there's something that I call brain retraining, in which you now start to retrain your brain, because central sensitization means that your brain has been trained in the negative way, and that causes all those, you being hypersensitive and things like that. In tomorrow's session, I'll talk more about it. I'm not sure if you've heard about the concept of chronification, which is what I just talked about. You have this chronification in which the migraine becomes a lot more chronic, from episodic to chronic, and every little thing causes the migraine. So understanding and addressing central sensitization is really, really crucial in managing your migraines, in managing chronic migraines. And often it involves a combination of, some people take medication, some people do lifestyle modification, and sometimes even behavioral therapy, just to reduce the nervous system sensitivity. So let me know. I think that's it. Let me know what's your takeaway from this. Have you heard of this concept of central sensitization, and any comments that you would like to make? So tomorrow we will be looking at day 4. Okay, so optimizing our sleep, because that's one of the things that can also trigger migraine. It's either if you have too much sleep or less sleep, that can affect people. And then hydration as well. Cool. If you don't have anything to share, I'll see you tomorrow. Tomorrow to be the same time at 2 p.m. And yeah, I look forward to seeing you then. If you don't have any questions, okay, awesome.